I think I have completely misunderstood something, or made a mistake somewhere. Like, it's so you see here it's changing the last digit. Okay, I don't have the code that I want then. Okie dokie. Let's go back. I'm not going to accept the imported face. I'm going to do a custom face. I'm really annoyed that I have to actually do this from scratch. Instead of like just having that face that I wanted ready. But what can you do? I guess I just have to deal with it. Here we go again. Face on the fly. I tend to put this stuff right down the middle. Just very neutral sort of figures here for most of the facial structure. Cheek gaunt. Maybe a little gaunt, but not crazy gaunt. Ear size down the middle. Ear orientation down the middle. Eyes, we'll come back to the eyes. Let's just get the hair sorted out. Just so it looks like... kind of like how I want him to look. I don't know. I guess what happened is that I thought I was copying down the code that would give me the face that I wanted, but apparently not. Apparently that's not what I was actually doing. For whatever reason, that code was not accurate to the character that I used to have, so we're gonna have to do this again, I guess. Let's start with the eyes for a second. And the thing is, you can't quite remember what these are. I kind of only remember the settings based on what they're next to. So I just remember that setting that was before the first E is the one that I want, or at least started out with, and actually looks the best, I think. Yeah, he's a bit squinty-eyed like the first guy. Eye height seems alright, I guess. Right? It should probably be just a bit level with the top of the ears, kinda. Brow height, I usually raise the brow a little bit. Brow depth needs to come back a bit, that's crazy. The brows in general I don't like. Maybe can I change the brows? This one's right under the R. Yes, we'll go with no brows. Let's make a no brow shepherd. They're not bad actually. We got the Caden brows here. They're actually not bad, these ones, the ones that I had before. Okay, I guess we're staying with those. Eyes. Eye width. Let's relax those eyes a bit. Just slightly in. Eye height, we messed with that a bit. Eye depth, not too deep. I felt a bit uncomfortable with how deep we're there in the first game. Like that. Is that... It seems okay, I guess. It also depends on the nose. Brow depth, we pulled that back. Brow height, we moved it up. Iris color. We'll just go with that. That's fine. Jawline. Kind of down the middle. I don't know. Chin height. Yeah, let's get some chin height. Chin depth. Not too prominent. Prominent, but not too prominent. Mouth. Let's get the nose right first before we get the mouth right. And that looks alright to me. That looks a bit too thin. I mean, we're back to the original nose here, I guess. I guess that's alright. Nose height, let's drop that a bit. Not all the way, but a bit. And then nose depth. How deep is your nose? What's weird here is how much it messes with the mouth depth as well. Like something like that should be okay, but then like if you take it down too much, you can see the mouth juts out a lot. I guess something like that is okay. I mean, I still think this is better than what I was working with before. Lip size, maybe just tone that down a bit. Mouth height, move it up a bit, just slightly. Not all that way up, but like there. It depends on the nose as well. We might need to make a bit more space for all this with the jaw, with the chin. Get it a bit more jutty out. Get it a bit wider, maybe. Very chiseled looking. We'll rein in the jaw a bit. And again, it doesn't look like it's jutting out very far. It doesn't have to jut out, but sort of be in balance. That's not bad. I think it's close to what I want. I'm gonna go back to the eyes for a second and just check. Like, are these eyes better? I don't know if they seem more in proportion to the face, because these seem like kind of small. Like he's just squinting all the time. What do you think? Should we stay with squinty eyes, Shepard? He's always aiming at something in the distance. Looking for something to shoot. It's not bad. I think we're gonna rein in the mouth depth a bit. Make it a bit more in proportion, I guess. That's not bad. Opinions? I think we're gonna go with this. Any final thing that I need to know seems okay. I mean, it looks like my nose. I got this hookish nose a bit. I got a very, not very sharp, but you know, there's definitely a change in direction where the bone stops and where the cartilage begins. Let's just mess with the double check these settings. I think I want face size down a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. My Shepard's keeping in shape. Neck thickness. Too thin, too thick. Sort of regular, I guess. I don't know, I don't really want like a weirdly thick or thin neck. Cheek width. Oh, I should look at that from the front. A bit more streamlined there. Cheekbones, this is where I should look at from the side. That looks okay. Cheek gaunt. I don't actually know what this does really well. It's hard to tell. I mean, I'm tempted to just leave it in the middle because it's just weird. I think we leave that in the middle. And the ear size in general, I'm okay with all that. Eyes, we're gonna tone down the eye height a bit. Just put, I mean, it seemed like they were too high. They were pressing up against the brows weirdly. Eye width. No, I'm okay with the eye width, I guess. Right? Right down there. I mean, I think I had it here. Again, now I'm getting into real fine-tuning, which probably I don't need to. Eye depth, I'm still okay with that. Right there. Seems alright to me. I'm going to increase the brow height a bit more. Alright. Let's go with that. Let's look at him from a distance. He looks like my guy, but closer to what I intended. Alright, so now we have our class choices here. We get the choice to change which class we're at. We played the first game as a soldier. Soldier in a very specific way, which is using immunity tanking. So we were super tanky, and we were super shooty. And the mission, or the strategy, was to charge forward, absorb all the attention and the aggro, use immunity to shake off the damage and kill things, and then use our two teammates for crowd control primarily. All right, so a lot of biotic-based crowd control. But biotics got really nerfed in this game, at the insanity level at least, and probably at most other levels there's some extent of a nerf. So you've got the Adept, for example. Adept? I'm not sure. And they've given this character Singularity. Now, Singularity was one of the most powerful biotic abilities that Liara had in the first Mass Effect game, and if you played as a Adept Shepard in the first game, you also had access to Singularity. And it's just a ridiculously powerful ability. It can crowd control entire rooms. The difference, the nerf here is that in Mass Effect 2, enemies have shields, or they have armor, or they have barriers. And if that layer of protection is still present, then they can't really be crowd controlled by biotics. Biotics can sort of knock them off balance or make them stagger a little bit, but you can't lift them to the air if they've still got shields left, or barriers, or armor. And in fact, there are some characters that only have an armor bar, so it's impossible to crowd control them in a sense, or at least to fully crowd control them. And so what that means is if you want to play with the biotic abilities, you have to first remove the protection. And the problem is, once you've removed the protection, you might as well just finish the job and kill the enemy. Enemies have, generally speaking, smaller health bars than they had in Mass Effect 1. Some of the Mass Effect 1 health bars were gigantic. And so you really had no choice but to crowd control, because there's no way to kill enemies quickly enough. In this game, you can kill enemies quicker, as long as you can deal with the various layers of protection efficiently. And that is the name of the game here. This is sort of an elemental color matching game that Mass Effect 2 implements. It's very different than Mass Effect 1. The idea here is, to have exactly the right tools in terms of damage types and abilities to very efficiently remove protection from enemies. Right? So if you look at, for example, the Adept, let's just go back there, they've got Warp. Sentinel has Warp too. And Warp is really great against biotics. Barriers, excuse me. So if an enemy has a barrier, Warp is one of the best ways to get rid of that barrier. It's actually not completely different, but very different from the Mass Effect 1 Warp, which was primarily about debuffing enemy armor. This Warp is mainly about dealing with barriers, and to a lesser extent armor, I think. And it's also about, throwing very cool biotic fireballs, which is fun, but very different than Mass Effect 1. You can see the Sentinel here has Warp, has Overload, and so it can deal very efficiently with barriers, and can deal very efficiently with shields with Overload. Can't really deal so well with armor based on their base abilities. Right? If you go to someone like the Infiltrator, who has Incinerate, this Incinerate attack is very good against armor, very not good at all against shields or barriers as far as I know, and will only actually panic the enemies if they are unprotected. So until an enemy is unprotected, Incinerate, they can shake it off. Engineers in Mass Effect 1 were really about debuffing the enemy and just sort of disabling enemy abilities more than anything else. Just messing with the enemies, hacking them, disabling their weapons, disabling their powers, stuff like that. In this game, they're actually, again, they can do some overload to remove that. As I recall, when I played through as an engineer, I mainly just spammed the drone, and the drone was just the best distraction ever. So in a sense, the engineer kind of has some better crowd control ability against protected enemies, because at least it can shift the aggro away from the player. And that's a form of crowd control. Not what I want to do in this playthrough. Adept, I've talked about the limitations here. Sentinel, possible, but not really my style. The Sentinel is mostly useful for the powers that the Sentinel has. And I don't want to have the powers. I want my teammates to bring the powers with them. Vanguard gets Charge. Charge is really cool and not that useful in this game. People have noted that if you charge an enemy and they're not the last enemy, then the enemy that you charge, okay, you're going to knock that person off balance, but then all their friends are going to start shooting you immediately. You're just going to absorb all the aggro. So it's really, really dangerous in that sense. And if you use it only to kill the last enemy, what's the point? It's just the last enemy. I still think there's a way to play it that works and makes sense. I'm not sure about that, but I think the best way to play with Charge is to just use it as an emergency shield recharge, because it does recharge your shield. So you could just sort of close manually, just run up to enemies and start shooting them, and then when you get low on shields, just sort of charge them to recharge. But I think at Insanity, there's just too much damage for that strategy to be effective. It is on a cooldown. Infiltrator, you get Cloak. Cloak multiplies your damage and keeps you hidden. I want the tank. I don't want my teammates to take any aggro. I'll take the aggro. And so we're back to Soldier. Maybe not the most interesting class, but it has a very... The kit here really synchronizes well. Adrenaline Rush, you can just keep hitting that. And then the other powers of ammo. Ammo is a power in this game, it's not an item. These things are not on a cooldown, not really. They just stay on. And so just turning on these ammo powers, you can just leave them on. Turn them on at the beginning of the mission, leave them on, and then you go straight to Adrenaline Rush and just spam that. And we'll be doing that for a while. Sorry for the lengthy discussion. It's just one of the things that is the most interesting to me. I think the game changed a lot from Mass Effect 1 to 2, and it's worth talking about how the mechanics are fundamentally different. We have a lot of bonus powers that we can choose from. These powers are available to us because we did the loyalty missions of all of the characters, all of our potential teammates. And I've played with most of them. They all have pluses and minuses. Reeve is a good one. It gives the soldier a useful tool against barriers. You got armor-piercing ammo, which has one of the highest damage multipliers in the game against armor, which is a common defense type. But I think I'm going to go for a flashbang grenade, because I've not played with it before as my power, I don't think. And from what I understand, it actually is a pretty effective minor crowd control power, even against protected enemies. And we'll see if that's true. And the other reason I want to use it is that it has a different mechanic. You actually have to toss it like a grenade, which is different than a lot of other powers, even if they're, you know... Even Inferno Grenade doesn't work like a grenade. And I think that could be a fun element, too, to have a proper grenade.